Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could teach the gullible to never be so comfortable with lies they eat like comfort food, to disregard the bogus claims and pseudoscientific claims? Can you imagine just how much indeed the world would change? No more political predators playing on the populace, but ilkas and plots to shift and kill metropolis. No more villains with the title in the Bible, holding phony temper Bibles like the stuff they teach is vital. Imagine it was normal to have to prove a claim you make, and folks really feel ashamed expressing content that was fake. It's not to say we never make mistakes, it's just to say we go out of our way to show the evidence it takes.
Remain skeptical while you travel the road, the reason stay strapped with logic and facts. That's what it is, yo. Keep reality intact to help the truth grow. Question every claim, especially the ones you believe in. Remain skeptical while you travel the road, the reason.
Welcome to the award-winning TV show. What show is this? Road to Reason, the Skeptic's Guide to the 21st Century. Today, I am very, very happy because we're going to talk about so many great things today. There's so many topics. It was really hard to figure out one. But today, I have two guests with me. I have Dr. Nick Harding. He's a passionate teacher, teaches here locally in the Washington, D.C. area. He's an activist, and he's a great thinker. And also, we have with us a PhD student, Hypatia Alexandria, who is business owner and soon to be an author and a Latina thinker, I believe, right?
Yes, hopefully so.
Welcome to the show, both of you.
Thanks for having us, David.
All right, well, today we're going to take a step back. We normally have guests, we have people that we communicate, authors and things like that, but today we decided that since the United States appears to be in a race to the bottom, it appears to be moving fast to 1957 because, you know, those were we're trying to make America great again. And apparently in 1957 it was a great time for America to be great. You know, lead paint, lead gasoline, and, you know, etc.
Thalidomide.
Exactly. So we're going to be talking about some of these issues, and again, we're just going to be able to address a couple, 2, 3, or 4. We have 100 listed in here, but we will cover as many as possible. But before then, we want to do the typical thing, which is some announcements, some news, et cetera, and go from there. And of course, you know, we have to have the person of the week and a joke. So be ready for that. So why don't we start with the first announcement, Nick?
Yeah, okay. I just want viewers to know about Skepticon 10. It's coming up on the weekend of November 10th through 12th in Springfield, Missouri, specifically the Springfield Oasis Hotel and Convention Center. So if you haven't already made your plans, you still have time, I think.
I think Skepticon is free also. I understand. I've been to it before. It is an amazing event. Now, talking about amazing events, on November 25th, the Black Non-Believers, who are headquartered, they're a national group, but they're headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia. They are having their 2017 annual meeting in a boat, in a cruise ship. So if you've never been to a cruise ship, they say that if, I don't know, 90% or some high number of people that go to a cruise, they go back again. But this one is going to be even better because it'll have all kinds of skepticism, all kinds of good things to talk about. And then, of course, you know, it's luxury because, you know, in a cruise ship, they serve you and they clean your room and you go from place to place and see all these interesting places. So it's going to be very exciting. I highly recommend it for everyone. And, you know, having a convention at sea. And if you misbehave, they can just have you walk the plank in there. All right, so that takes care of the announcements. Any announcements?
Yes, I wanted to quickly mention the Hispanic American Free Thinkers, the only not-for-profit organization in the country for Latinos, has collected nearly $9,000 for relief in Puerto Rico. As we know, Puerto Rico is still suffering great devastation from the hurricane, and Hispanic American Free Thinkers is trying to do as much as they can to help from here.
Yeah, it's really sad. It's still more than half the people don't have running water. I mean, imagine not being able to take a shower. I have some friends there that have told me, yes, we have to go to a creek and get water from there and drink water from there. There's no electricity for about 90% of the population. A month after this horrific event has taken place. And unfortunately, we live in a society where, you know, it's 10 minutes in the news and then people forget about it. Now it's the next thing. It's really sad.
So congratulations to you and Hafri David on what you've done already, what you're going to do. First of all, it's very important for us to show that you don't have to be religious to be doing good works. But also, of course, a couple of years ago, American Atheists had a convention in Puerto Rico. There are a lot of atheists in Puerto Rico who need our help as well. And I was just wondering if you guys could talk a little bit about the community there.
Yeah, in fact, those are the folks that are helping distribute the stuff that we already collected. Yeah.
Yeah, and Hafri has concentrated in buying 5 products to assist in this relief. And I think we talked about water filters, battery chargers, and solar battery powers, I'm sorry, and duct tape, tarps, and solar cookers. Yeah. So, you know, hopefully with this small contribution from from fellow citizens, you know, we'll be able to improve things a little bit in Puerto Rico, which needs to be done and continuously should be done, because we have a very short attention span, and people tend to forget with the next news what is happening, what the next news gets on TV. We forget about what happened a month ago.
Yes. All right, so that is, what else do we have in the news?
Well, we're going to be part of the problem, because we're going to shift to the next news cycle right now.
Yes.
So as you know, our show comes from the Washington area, and right here in Bladensburg, Maryland, we had a judge rule in favor of the American Humanist Association that had sued to remove a 40-foot Latin cross from a government property there.
What's wrong with that?
Some people are buried there who might not be Christian, right?
Yeah. I don't think anyone's buried there. I think it's just a cross that they put in a long time ago. And government is not supposed to, pick a religion. And if you put a cross, you're saying, well, if you're a Jew or a Muslim, an atheist, or anybody else, yeah, this is not for you. This is for all the other people that died in World War II. It's a World War I thing. So.
Of course, like I said, the first cross was put up by government, namely the Roman government. So I guess our government is only sort of carrying on a proud tradition of erecting crosses. But anyway, yes, we don't know whether this is going to be appealed or whether this is a final judgment, but the fight carries on to keep crosses off of government property.
So this has been done. This was done, I think, by it was American humanists that did this, and you'd assume that it's humanism. What they're saying is, look, you're excluding all these other people. It's okay to put a cross if you're going to put all these other symbols. It's no different than when we have these nativity scenes that go in government property. And really that's what it's all about, is government property, not endorsing one thing or another.
Well, and it also is the fact that, I think the goal should be to keep religion and government separate. And when you start erecting crosses in government property and taking one side or one religion versus the other, you are not really separating the both of them. So it is important.
But what could go wrong if religion and government get together?
2,000 years?
Actually, that little thing called the Inquisition might be an example, or Saudi Arabia today.
Well, again, that's why it's so important that we don't do this. So we keep moving forward rather than going backwards. And it seems that right now we're going backwards in so many different areas that we just don't want to add more issues to the progress that we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. So with that, actually, we can go to Person of the Week, because it's kind of related. It turns out the Freedom from Religion Foundation, they are very active when it comes to fighting the separation of church and state, or basically even better, we should all be saying separation of government and religion. Because a lot of people say, oh, church sounds so nice. No, it's religion. It's religious dogma that gets put in there. So Dan Barker was, for the longest time, a preacher, Pentecostal preacher. In fact, he's very fluent in Spanish because he did that in Mexico for many years. And he's been with the Freedom from Religion Foundation for a long, long time. And he and his group sue the government all the time for this kind of stuff. And they were participants in the lawsuit for this cross. And he also sued recently the United States government because he wanted to do an invocation, a secular invocation, and was denied because he was an atheist. Now, the court agreed with him that indeed he had been denied for being an atheist and that that's no good, but they basically rejected his claim because they said he had no standing against the people that he sued in there, which is the Speaker of the House and the people that actually signed the letter rejecting it. So because of that, that is why we have today Dan Barker as the person of the week. He's been doing this. The other thing that I admire about him and his organization, when you go on the internet, you never see any flame wars. You never see any fights or anything. They're very just quietly doing what they're supposed to be doing all the time. So do you both know him?
Yeah, I know him, and that's exactly why I like the group. I think it's great that there is no drama involved in when they are pursuing their goals, and I just wish all groups work like that.
I don't know him personally. I've seen Annie Laurie at Women in Secularism, for example. Yes. That's the closest I've come to them.
Dan and Annie are co-presidents of the Freedom from Religious Foundation, which originally started, I believe, was in the late 70s as an organization that was for women's rights, reproductive rights at the time. Now they still do that, but I think they've concentrated now more on the separation of church and state, because if women's rights usually get taken care of if you can manage that separation. Mm-hmm. All right, we have basically one thing left to do, and it is the joke of the week. Now, it's not a joke. It's not a joke more than an observation. But I know for a lot of people, some studies recently have shown that millennials, more than half of the millennials, believe that that I'm going to talk about is science. And what am I talking about? Astrology. So astrology, because millions of planets and stars have spent billions and billions of years lining themselves up just to let you know that you are going to meet someone with nice eyes today.
So I was asking David before the show, I've never understood exactly how the stars supposedly affect us. Is it the gravity? Is it the light?
It's all, Anyway, with that, we go on our break, and we'll be back to talk about some really heavy stuff, but that I think you're going to enjoy very much.
When I was younger, I didn't want to admit I had a serious disease. Because of my diabetes, I lost the sight in my left eye. Misconceptions continue to surround this monster public health issue, but the simple truth is, diabetes can often be prevented and complications avoided. You're not alone. Understand the realities of diabetes and know that you can manage it and lead a full, active life.
There's an alarming trend in the world today. Everywhere you go, people are saying that cinema is dead. But cinema is not dead. My name is Count Simon Gauntley, and on my television program, Count Gauntley's Horrors from the Public Domain, I make it my mission to resurrect forgotten film classics. I promise to dredge the sewers and ford the stagnant streams of film history to ensure that no film is truly lost to the ages. Count Gauntley and FPA, keeping cinema alive! Alive! Alive!
Well, even though Joseph's been gone 18 months, we've made the decision to keep all his things as they were when he was here last. I finally just packed his toothbrush away like 6 months ago. It had been sitting on the counter in the bathroom. And I was cleaning the bathroom one day and I just thought, okay, it's time to put the toothbrush in the medicine cabinet.
So, I just moved in with his family, and it's embarrassing. The little one, he likes to go outside and crawl around in the giant litter box. I don't know what he's doing. I mean, I was born and I knew how to use the litter box. Look at that. That's disgusting. Oh, poop already. You're making me nervous. Oh, okay, I can't look at this anymore. I really hope he grows out of this, for his sake.
This is Richard Dawkins. Doing commercials is unfamiliar territory for me, but I'm inviting you to watch Road to Reason, a skeptic's guide to the 21st century, on Fairfax Public Access every Sunday. Each week the hosts tackle wishful thinking, religion, pseudoscience, and the harm they cause, with a combination of facts, humor, and community involvement. They challenge believers to defend their faith and give you, the skeptic, a voice. With live call-ins for viewers and streaming on the World Wide Web, there's never a dull moment. Don't wait. Look at them now on Facebook and YouTube. And remember to watch Road to Reason, a skeptic's guide to the 21st century, or there'll be hell to pay.
Well, welcome back to Road to Reason, a skeptic's guide to the 21st century. Today we're going to be talking about many things. And the reason for the things that we're going to talk about is because over the last several months, since the last elections perhaps, we have seen sort of a stepping back on a lot of the social progress that had been made. So before that, we had, for instance, the Supreme Court had accepted equal marriage for same-sex couples, or as I call it, just marriage. And the same thing for rights for transgendered, for medical and others. And again, you know, rights to go to the bathroom, things like that. Again, I just call it rights for humans. And yet it seems that we're trying to step back. And there are a lot of different social issues and a lot of ethical issues that we'll talk about today. And so I'd like to start by asking the question about sexual harassment. It's been in the news in the last few days with the basically the scandal that Harvey Weinstein did, and basically him going to Europe to a spa to fix his sexual harassment behavior in 1 week. You know, so a lifetime of 60-some years doing it. Why don't we start with you, Hypatia? What do you think about this? Are we barking at the wrong tree, or is this something that is long overdue, or what?
Well, first of all, Harvey Weinstein went to Arizona for a European spa for a week. But, you know, nonetheless, the fact that it's a week and he's cured, it is unbelievable. And I really want to say that I feel for all those women that have been his victims as well as other predators. Now we have another Hollywood director that is coming out and talking, and I think he has 30 accusers already. So this is something, his last name is Toback, and I think it's James Toback is the name. And so, you know, finally we're bringing this issue to the table, and I'm a firm believer that the only way to solve things is by talking about them. It might not be a comfortable situation, but at least we are starting the conversation of what women have to go through to be able to function in their professions and in their places of employment or any endeavor that they embark on.
What's your take on this, Nick?
Well, I was just going to ask Hypatia, what do you think the solution is? Obviously, the sort of naming and shaming is a partial solution.
But, you know,
but going forward, how do we fix it?
Well, for me, the main issue is that women don't have equal access to opportunities. So they have to create their own opportunities, and sometimes creating those opportunities calls for things that at the time might not look like abuse, but they are abuse. And I think I would dare to speculate that 99% of women at one point or another they have been harassed or some sort of inappropriate comment, behavior has been performed or displayed on them, so they can get to the goal that they want to get. It shouldn't be like that, because I don't think most men have to go through those situations to become the best in their profession. So giving access to equal opportunities might help level the playing field, and I think right now it's not level.
But it's not just women. I mean, theoretically, men can be harassed. And the question I've often asked myself is, are there a lot of people that may not even know that they're being harassed because it's such a norm and in such a way that is expressed that they may think, oh, well, this is just what men do, or this is just what people do, when in fact it is a power thing. It's not a sexual thing, is it?
I don't think it's a sexual thing. I think it's a power thing, and I think many women don't comment on that because it's a shameful thing. It makes you appear that the only way for you to move forward is to accept these predatory behaviors, and it shouldn't be like that. So again, leveling the playing field, I think, should be the first step, and not talking about leveling the playing field, actually doing it.
Now, is there a difference of sexual harassment in religion versus non-religion, in the secular community, or do we think it's about the same, or is one more of an institution than the other?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, religion obviously perpetuates a lot of patriarchal attitudes, but to the extent, the question I guess becomes, to what extent is religion a reflection of the society, or society a reflection of the religion? And so I have to believe that a lot of these people who are doing this are secular with a small s, maybe not secular activists, although there are probably those as well. Mm-hmm. But they are simply, operating within patriarchal society, and you have to wonder what goes through their head, not in terms of their intention or their motivation, because that's obvious, but what goes through their mind in terms of how they can get away with it.
I mean, I think you got something there that is often learned and implied. So, for instance, if you look at the Catholic Church, which is very mild by the standards of many other religions, the Catholic Church, a woman cannot be a priest, a woman cannot be a pope, cannot be a cardinal, or have really any real power. A priest is always higher than a nun, than a woman, no matter what. But then you also look at Saudi Arabia, where and Bahrain and some of the other countries there, where if a woman is raped by 5 guys, the woman goes to jail for tempting those 5 guys. And it's really, you look at it and you think that's ridiculous, it's silly, but that's why in Saudi Arabia, a woman is not allowed in the street alone. She has to come with a brother or some other male to, quote unquote, protect her.
We have very low expectations for men, and I suppose that is the essence of privilege, that they're being held to a lower standard. You would think it would be the other way around, but
yet they treat women as if they were second-class citizens or inferior, because they're saying, oh, well, you can't be an executive, you can't be all of this, and oh, by the way, if you do want some equality, you're going to have to do some favors. And it really is bad for women in that sense. The question then becomes, if a woman or anyone acts in a bad way and actually claims that someone harassed them or someone raped them when in fact it's a lie, doesn't that cause more harm? And doesn't that should that be punished just as harshly as if that person had done the rape?
Well, next to suffering this type of victimization, sexual victimization, my second most biggest worry is the fact that women might come out and say that they've been sexually harassed or raped or anything, and when it actually hasn't happened, that would undermine and take the credibility away from the real victims in such a horrible way that I hope that never happens. However, I really don't have a solution how we can screen the actual victims from the potential victims.
Well, and some people may argue that we already have laws against perjury, but when perjury is only under oath. But if you are at the police station giving a statement or saying, you know, I've been harassed or I've been raped, and this happened, you know, a year ago, very difficult to prove otherwise. Really is the one word of one person against another, but it may cause more harm.
Yeah, or if someone is looking for 15 minutes of fame, this is the perfect, because it's such a prevalent topic right now that it would be the perfect thing for anybody to pretend that they went through it, but...
Well, Nick, you mentioned privilege. Now, Harvey Weinstein wasn't accused just last week, right?
Yeah. But we only found out about it then, right? Or are you talking about the Seth MacFarlane joke?
No,
I guess.
I think it's been out for a while. Yeah. There have been people that have been saying it for. It's sort of one of those open secrets. But he was a very powerful man. Now we also know another powerful person in government that was accused, and it was filmed and shown, and you know, and all of that, and yet able to, you know, that privilege. People say, look, I make a lot of money, I do all these things, and I can get away with it because of the power. Is that really going on, or is just these two people or three people that are just...
Well, I felt like it was the dog that didn't bark this week. You know, we were hearing a lot about Harvey Weinstein, including from the president, and yet, you know, have we already forgotten exactly? Yeah. A year ago, he was under the microscope. So, yeah, I mean, this is a social trend. Either it's happening more, or probably more likely more women are coming forward, or the media is taking it more seriously. But it's interesting times, maybe horrifying news, but also the fact that you're hearing it maybe means that some change is coming.
But it might be...
Watch the space.
Some people have said that it's good if we get children to start teaching them as a young age that this is the way it's appropriate behavior. And maybe not so much children as teens or preteens to say this is acceptable and this is not acceptable, and start going from there.
Absolutely. Parents, start with your young men, your boys.
And girls, because I think girls need to realize when they're being harassed and be able to stop it right there and then. I think sometimes there might be times where boys may not realize that what they're doing is you know, open sexual harassment.
Yeah, and this particularly for Latino parents, please treat your children equally. Don't have a set of rules for girls and a different set of rules for boys, because it's, you know, that I think that's one of the ways to create machismo in the Latino society, and that's exactly what we're trying to get away from.
So it's all really critical thinking at the end of the day. I mean, what we're talking about here is critical thinking, and I think that's a great point. Culture sometimes gets into it, and we need to question culture. Culture is just an invention, a human invention like anything else. So I'm going to change topics now. I'm going to talk about memes. What are memes?
Well, memes are those ubiquitous little pictures on social media or elsewhere, usually with some text, sometimes funny, sometimes obscure if you don't get the inside joke. And they've been in the news a lot this week, and David's going to explain why.
Well, so what do memes do? I guess memes are those snippets of information that are supposed to burrow like a little virus into your brain and stay there. And so if you have something that is clever or nice, you know, good looking, or you know, something that is funny or anything like that, it stays in your mind. The problem that we seem to be having is that most people that go to Facebook or Twitter or whatever, and they see these memes, they think they're true. They don't often question them enough. They think, well, it's in a circle, and it says this was said by Benjamin Franklin, therefore it must be true. Very few people go and actually look up to see if Benjamin Franklin actually said that. So how could this be used against us? Any thoughts?
Well, how could it? It has already been used against us. You know, I mean, the more we learn about past elections, the more involvement that we find coming from, you know, third parties that had nothing to do with it, and it has really tilted the results in the wrong way. And that's why, again, critical thinking is something so important, because just because it's in Facebook, it doesn't mean that it's true. Just because somebody tweeted about it doesn't mean that it's true, and it's up to each one of us to be able to research it.
And a lot of times, it's, who tweeted? Oh, well, this was tweeted by the president, or this was tweeted by this other person, and it has that air of authority because that person wouldn't have just retweeted or said something that it wasn't true.
I mean, I guess they can have their use, right? If you don't agree with the meme, then it tells you who's perpetrating or perpetuating false ideas. Like, guess I'm kind of glad I'm not on Twitter very often, but if I see Pepe the Frog, I'm going to know, stay away from that person. Or, it's gotten the president in trouble if he's tweeted as sort of, an alt-right or otherwise dodgy,
Well, and that's the thing. Right now, apparently some news sources are saying that $150,000 is what it took for Russia to buy some space and time and be able to put some memes in Facebook and in social media in order to derail the Democrats' election last November. Do you agree with that, or you think, might have been a small factor, but not?
I often find myself saying that Vladimir Putin thinks democracy is a sign of weakness, and that is, the weak, the Achilles heel to attack. But maybe in this case, it's just the sort of poor level of education, or and not that that's unrelated to democracy, of course. We're all striving to it's, as you said, it's a race to the bottom. And people often confuse ignorance and democracy as going hand in hand, as there's a famous Isaac Asimov quotation to that effect.
Yeah, education definitely has something to do with this, because this shows the laziness of most people, that they get, a sentence through Twitter or a picture on Facebook pointing at something, and they assume that that's the truth and it shouldn't be researched. Again, it's up to all of us. I mean, democracy needs participation, needs educated participation. It just doesn't flourish by itself. You have to water, you have to maintain it, you have to, take care of it. And we're not taking care of it. We're just giving up all the rights and all the care to Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat or whatever social media. And I'm not saying that social media is bad. I mean, that's how we've been able to communicate with hurricane victims. So it has a positive side, like everything in life. There is a negative and there is a positive, but you have to weigh the benefits, and you have to know when the positive is put to good use.
And I think it shows also that although we made a lot of social progress, as we said before, I think there are a lot more skeptics today through the nuns, or at least questioning religion to a great degree. Part of what these memes do and are intended to do are to evoke an emotion. And when the emotions go in place, then the brain kind of shuts down. I mean, one of the Russian memes, for instance, is a picture of this Hispanic that says, 3.5 million Hispanics voted, illegal immigrants voted for Hillary. And it's been shown that it's a false creation by a government that is not friendly to ours. And yet, the meme, even when it became public that this had been generated by the Russians, the meme continues to be passed around and around. And so the meme, when I say it's a virus, it becomes very difficult to get an antidote for it. So how could we protect ourselves from that? Because religion does it all the time. Every time you go by a church and there's a little slogan in there, Jesus hurts when you don't go to church or something like that, that burrs in people's mind. And if you see that every day as you go to work, every single day, people are saying, oh, maybe I don't want to hurt Jesus. Maybe I should go back to church. I mean, I think they're the inventors of the meme.
Well, I'm going to be obsessive about this. I think education would be the foundation to fight this, because once you become basically educated, I'm not even talking with a couple of degrees or anything like that, but basically educated and you question where the information is coming from and the purpose of the information. That should be the foundation for anyone to do their own research. We can't just say it calls upon our emotions, because we are human beings, and yes, and we do have emotions, but we also have brains. We just need to learn how to use them better.
All right, so this brings us actually to something in this meme thing, is the truth, right?
Yeah.
All right, so Dr. Nick, you got a PhD. What is truth?
Oh, okay. I think that was the question that Pontius Pilate asked in the Bible, right? It's my favorite Bible
You have to go there,
quotation,
didn't
you? Yeah. So it's a fascinating question. I think the distinction that comes up often when discussing this is people speak about their own truths. In other words, the distinctive way in which they perceive the world around them, and then truth that other people can agree on. And I think before, when we were discussing in the green room before, David distinguished really between truth and honesty. And honesty is sort of more subjective to that person. And you know, when they are saying something that's factually incorrect or truthy, I think that was the word that prevailed maybe around 10 years ago, that is perhaps a better way of putting it than referring to that as truth.
Yeah, for me, truth is something that exists outside our perception. And through science and knowledge and understanding and logic and all of that, we asymptotically get closer and closer to that external truth that exists, whether we believe in it or not. And so when we talk about is there a God or not, do angels exist or not, do unicorns exist or not, those questions, in my opinion, have a definite truth. Either they do exist or they don't exist. And now the question is, how do we find out what is truth versus what is imaginary? And I think part of the problem is people confuse the two things, and they imagine something and see it as a truth. And yes, that's where you get oh, well, that's my truth. What is your truth? And oh, well, let's respect each other's truth. It's what really religions, all of them, say. All religions claim to have the truth, but respect all that. Now, there's only one group of hellbound people that don't respect that particular truth and say, nope, I call BS on it. It is atheists and non-believers that they say the emperor has no clothes.
Well, I think this is our mission as a movement now. Maybe after 9/11, it seemed to be, the problem seemed primarily to be a religion or religion's propensity to violence, or not.
Because that was their truth.
But this is what's most important now is the readiness of so many Americans and other people as well to talk about this being a post-truth or post-factual time. And this is something we have to fight back on. As atheists, I feel like what we all share in common is not simply maybe a secular premise that there is no supernatural, but actual ability to weigh evidence and to assemble evidence. And this is something, and I think that this is what is most endangered by talk of a post-truth society or culture.
So, Hypatia, how do you see the attack on truth?
Well, I think as human beings, we, especially if it's not our truth, we kind of don't tend to dismiss it, and we don't like it. And then when someone tells us the truth, we reject it because it's the truth and it hurts. And then when somebody lies to us, we get upset because they lied to us. So it's very difficult for someone to, and again, we're talking about the truth that you talk about everyone or approaching a level of agreement and where there is some evidence to state that that's the truth. I'm not talking about my truth and your truth. I personally struggle every day trying to, accept the truth, even though sometimes it bothers me, it makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't like it, I don't agree with it, but it's something beyond myself. It's not within myself.
So truth implies honesty, but honesty is not necessarily truth. In the Free Thought Day that they had in California last week, One of the speakers there was Larry Decker, excellent guy who is in charge of the, I think he's the executive director for the Secular Coalition. And he was giving a speech about all these laws that are right now trying to be changed. Like, for instance, the Johnson Amendment, where you have this law that says that preachers, by the virtue of being preachers and talking about supernatural stuff, that they shouldn't have to pay taxes, etc. That's already law. But on top of that, that they can do politicking, that they can participate and give opinions and tell people who to vote for, et cetera, et cetera. That's being changed, and these are laws from long ago. So one of the comments that he received, not once or twice, but several times, was that, you know, Larry, your thing was amazing, the amount of information you provided, the facts and everything, but man, you're such a downer. Man, I was depressed after I finished watching you. And I saw in his face, seeing, well, you know, I want to please people, I want to make people happy, and yet telling the truth is not always comfortable. And it seems to me that we're sort of maybe pre-wired not to accept truth if it makes us a little uncomfortable, and therefore that's why, you know, certain news organizations get these viewers.
Well, one way to motivate people, again, to refer back to the emotions that we referenced before, is fear. And he's attempting to motivate people by fear, fear that is backed up by evidence, to be sure. But I know that my email inbox right now, right before the election, is filled with candidates who are actually telling me that the polls say they're going to lose, because this is how you raise money. So you would think that candidates would never want to say it looks like we might lose, because you know, who wants to get on the losing bandwagon? And yet this is what they do on a daily basis. So fear is powerful.
Powerful emotion. So now this is related to also the fact that we want to shut people from telling us the truth sometimes. Now, have you both heard of Milo and Richard Spencer and some of these people that have, and even Bill Maher, who have been both left and right, who have been blocked from speaking at universities, etc., which you would imagine that's the place really to have any conversation and talk about anything, our universities. What is are we missing on truth because we're not hearing these voices?
I don't think we're missing in truth, but I am a firm believer in free speech. And where I draw the line is in, you know, when there is a threat of physical harm, that's when it stops being free speech and it becomes something else. But until then, I think everyone should have the right to speak. Just like they have the right to speak, I have the right not to attend to listen to their stupid speeches sometimes, or good speeches if I like them, but I think they should be allowed to speak. Sometimes when you forbid something, you make it more attractive for everyone else, and everybody wants to get on the wagon. Or, well, you know, they don't let him speak, so I'm just going to attend anyway, and that's, to me, that's an issue. Also, you know, universities are supposed to be a place for universal knowledge, and that's where you learn to channel your critical thinking. So if you should have access to all kind of ideas and then pick what makes you happy.
I mean, how can you criticize or say this is true or not true if you can't expose it even?
Well, it is true that the classic argument for free speech has been that truth emerges from the clash of different ideas.
And also,
however bad.
And the right is to protect that speech that we don't typically want to hear anyway.
But I think that in many of these cases, what people are asking for isn't necessarily censorship. It's by an external sort of coercive agent. It's more self-censorship. It's asking people to consider what they're saying. Is it going to upset somebody or make them feel worse about themselves? That's what they're asking. You know, isn't it possible for us to be perhaps kinder to each other? And I do think that, especially in the age of social media, you need to have that self-censorship instinct kick in and say, this is my first thought. Is it my best thought? Mm-hmm. And what are the consequences of my speech for other people? There's nothing coercive or inconsistent with the First Amendment there. It's just what I was raised with, which we called manners then.
But, well, one of our viewers asks, should I have the right to talk ISIS on campus? Should,
What does that mean?
Yeah.
Talk ISIS?
Yeah, I would imagine it means that
violence.
Should you bring ISIS and their ideas of women being inferior, or that anyone who's not Muslim should be killed or destroyed? So maybe promoting ISIS, promoting violence, talking about promoting violence.
Well, I mean, I didn't really follow the Richard Spencer thing at University of Florida. Obviously spoke there. Some of his followers shot into a crowd. So I'm beginning to think that, really, has there ever been a Richard Spencer appearance that was not attended with some sort of violence? Maybe colleges are within their right not to spend lots of money on security for this guy that is nothing but bad news.
Not everyone has a right to speak,
but
necessarily.
I mean, I don't see that these people have a right to invite themselves to colleges unless there are kids there that want to hear from them. I don't know in these cases whether that's been true or not. That's where I'm willing to say. I just don't know. But he basically blackmailed the University of Florida to have him there. And yeah, much worse could have happened than did, but yeah, to have people shooting into a crowd is not my idea of somebody that you want to bring onto a college campus. That's under any other circumstance, that's a school shooting.
Yeah, I agree with that statement, and that's what I say. For me, freedom of speech, it happens until there is some sort of physical harm or threat of physical harm. At that point, you have to stop. Also, I'm not talking about renting yourself for these speeches. I'm talking about being invited to speak. And of course, if there is an issue with safety, physical safety, perhaps then the event should be canceled. But it shouldn't be canceled just because the person has different ideas. That's what I'm referring to when I refer to free speech, having different ideas, not going there to kill or to cause riots or do any of that.
Now, Nick, you mentioned courtesy, and you mentioned sort of being nice to other people, et cetera, and manners. And I know, Hypatia, you've been to participating in something called Better Angels, where you get this group of right side and left side from the political spectrum and sit down to talk together, and you're sort of forced to have good manners and sort of forced to not say certain things. Does truth suffer, in your opinion, if there's too much courtesy? Is there such a thing?
In my opinion, it does suffer, because you can't go to a party with with their guns and you take a knife. You got to go to a party with a knife if there are other knives. And I'm not saying, again, you don't go there to fight anybody, but sometimes you need to state the truth, whether the other person appreciates it or likes it. Truth, again, is the truth, and it's not my truth, it's not their truth. Thus, if the person doesn't like the truth, if we're among adults, that adult should have enough control of their emotions and say, well, I don't like it. She's entitled to her own opinions, and I don't agree with it, and I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna do that. But it shouldn't be, let's not talk about it because you might hurt my feelings. So I think if we go that far, the truth does suffer when we're trying to be super nice.
It's something that religion usually says. Oh, you're offending my religion, and you're offending. So a word, I think you've said this before. The word offend is a prostituted word. It's used too often to shut down free speech and criticism, and if you can't criticize, then you can't get to the truth, in my opinion. But I think there's one truth that we actually agree on a lot of things, and that is that I think we agreed that no religion has ever presented evidence that their claims are true, which is why they require faith. If you have facts and you have evidence, you don't need faith whatsoever. So the question for you both is, are there certain religions that are worse than others? And I think we probably know the answer to that, but here in the United States, are there some that we should be fighting in a stronger way than we are today, except because they cause that harm, or they deviate people from that truth, or blind them, or give them a mental block or something?
I personally think so, but I also have to add that to make that statement, I will have to put several religions, so the religions that we're trying to assess in a context, in a frame time, because one religion might have been better at this time or worse at that time, but if we put them in context, we can compare them, and I think comparing religions is not a bad thing, because then you can get the truth, whether they are the truth or not. I mean,
sometimes I think comparing them, they can see from each other that, well, I believe the opposite of you, and I have as much evidence, which is 0, than you do, so how do I know?
And not just that, how is your God better than my God? I mean, why does your God, I don't understand that. Or when religious people tell me, and I'm the product of a Catholic school all my life, so I'm not in a war against religion. I just worry when religious start trying to proselytize and trying to evangelize, that's when I have the issue. And most religious people, they want to be the moral police, and they want to tell you what to do, what to believe, what not to do, and that's where I have the problem.
They're telling you what the truth is.
Yeah, their truth, and it's not the truth, because again, the truth is not within ourselves. The truth is out there, and it's just one.
So to answer your original question, David, I think my first response is to say, well, of course, the Unitarians are great. I love the Unitarians,
Why?
right? Because they're they probably know different than us.
Some viewers may not know what the Unitarians are.
Unitarians are, they are very, very secularized, but they enjoy each other's company and they get together.
I think they're called Unitarians because they accept all religions to come in play. So if you're a Muslim, if you're whatever religion, you're welcome into their church.
That's probably more the Universalist side of. They're called Unitarian Universalists.
Exactly.
Unitarian is reference to a fairly esoteric argument about the unity or Trinity of God. I think, to repeat something you said in the green room, that the reason that some religions are fairly acceptable or anodyne is because people outside of them have agitated and pressured them to be so, namely us. So we should keep doing what we're doing.
It was the free thinkers that got the Inquisition eventually to dissipate.
Yeah. So if we're looking at religions that are not relatively circumspect, or it's because they're operating in maybe a less friendly context where there aren't sort of friendly critics from the outside who are asking them to moderate themselves.
Asking the questions and getting them to answer and do the uncomfortable. One of the things, for instance, with Christians in debates that we typically use as atheists is point out all those parts of the Bible that most Christians have never even read, and asking some tough questions. Look, in this passage, 1 Samuel 15:3, God says, "Kill all the newborns." Would you do it? Would you follow and get people to think under those terms? Now, the scary part, of course, is those that will say, yes, whatever God tells me to do, I will do it. It doesn't matter how horrible, because if God orders, it's good.
Now, you were saying, though, that they censor those negative or frightening passages in church services. My response is, thank goodness, right? Because what kind of...
But it wasn't always the case. Yeah. It wasn't always the case. So right now, the way I see ISIS and I see, the sort of the radical Muslims, it's exactly where the Catholic Church was, 600 years ago during the Inquisition, where, they're the Inquisition now. Anyone that disagrees with them, they get, chop their head off or torture them and do things like that. And unfortunately, the problem is that these things continue on forever. You were talking about waterboarding being part of the sort of the Inquisition torture. And where did we get that from the beloved religion?
The Inquisition is still around, in fact. I think it's called the Congregation for the Propagation of the Holy Faith, or something like that. It's an office in the Vatican, and it's simply that their methods have changed, but the objective, which is consensus, has not changed.
And now we have about 3 minutes left or so. So on that same topic, you being a teacher, would you favor teaching all religions in high school, for instance?
Well,
Or,
to the extent that, so I am a history teacher, so there's nothing more historical than religions, right? I mean, they're certainly stronger in the past than in the present. So it's interesting to me, as somebody interested in history, religions are interesting to me. But insofar as we're preparing kids for the world, it will also benefit them to be able to navigate the world if they understand what people are thinking, and in many cases those people will be religious people.
And the why. Yeah, part of the problem though that I see with teaching all religions in a historical context, that kind of stuff, is that unfortunately religion tends to blind people. And I can see some teachers giving this course in Mississippi somewhere and saying and showing all the bad and negative things that all the other religions do or say and how silly it is, except for their own particular faith. That it's not, now we're the true Christians. Inquisition, those Catholics, no, that was not true. They deviated from the Christian faith. No, they were not Christians. And it's always this, this thing that we're the true ones, everyone else is the fake one.
Yeah, being a secular person, I think religion should be learned on your own. I don't think it should be part of the school curriculum. There are too many things and too many science classes that are not being taught because, all these Bible studies that sometimes or Bible groups are even brought to schools. So no, I think if you are interested in religion, you should be interested, but you should be interested in your own time.
Let me make one more argument for it, which is that some of them are just really good stories. When I learned as a freshman in high school, and we learned the Bible, it was taught as, actually it was taught very well. I mean, they taught the higher criticism that the Gospels were written way after Jesus lived.
Who taught you that?
It was in the curriculum in my 9th grade here in Fairfax County. Yeah,
so in a secular school?
Yeah, at a public high school.
Okay.
And I think Bible as literature is a perfectly legitimate. I mean, a lot of our literary references, the ones not from Shakespeare, come from the Bible, right?
Why go just to the biblical one and not? I mean, the Quran just has as many things, and other ancient books have also a lot of stuff depending on the culture. Seems to me that is giving again privilege to a particular religion. And saying, well, Christian values and Christianity and et cetera, are a higher value than anything else.
Well, I think what you're doing when you teach Bible as literature is you're saying it's not. You're going to approach this text in precisely the way you would approach sort of the Epic of Gilgamesh or the Odyssey or the Iliad, or even, some more obscure work of literature from the same time.
Okay, just give me one. In that note, in that I'm going to do a shameless plug.
Go for it. We got about 30 seconds.
Yeah, I have, there is a book coming out in reference to this in spring 2018, and it's a compilation of essays from different women, and it's been edited by Karen Garst. And the title of the book is Women versus Religion, the Case Against Faith and for Freedom. And it's going to be sold probably in the spring of 2018.
Well, all right. Well,
it's going to be available. It's going to be available. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and there's and lots of essays and everything. So for now, I want to thank you both for being here today. It was wonderful. We could have talked about many more things. Really appreciate you being here today. Thank you.